We've already learnt how relative clauses can be used to add extra detail to a noun, or to clarify which noun we're referring to. One particular type of relative clause is an embedded clause. An embedded clause is simply a relative clause that is embedded within a main clause. It's as if the main clause has been split in two, and the relative clause has been squeezed into the middle of the main clause. Let's take a look at some examples as we visit our school canteen. Here's a simple sentence. Ben tidied up the trays. This is a main clause as it contains a subject, that's Ben, and a verb, tidied. It doesn't tell us much about Ben though, so we can use a relative clause to add some extra information. Since Ben's a person, we'll need to use the relative pronoun who or whose. I'd like to add the fact that Ben is always very helpful, so that's my relative clause. To embed it, I squeeze it into the main clause after the noun that it's describing, so that goes after Ben. Now I need a way of holding this relative clause in position, so I'll use a pair of commas, one at the start and one at the end. These help show where the relative clause starts and finishes. They also help us read the sentence more clearly. Ben, who is always very helpful, tidied up the trays. Notice how we do still have a main clause, it's just it's been split in two. It's still a main clause as it would still make sense in a sentence by itself. The embedded clause, however, wouldn't make sense by itself, making it a subordinate clause rather than a main clause. Okay, let's go back to our simple sentence. Ben tidied up the trays. What if I wanted to use an embedded clause to add a little more detail about the trays? Well, since I'd like to use an embedded clause, I'll need to move the noun I'd like to describe to the start. So the sentence will become, the trays were tidied up by Ben. Okay, we're now ready to add an embedded clause to add detail about the trays. Since the trays aren't alive, we'll use which or that as our relative pronoun. As a general rule, use which to add detail and use that to add clarity. I'd like to clarify which trays it was that Ben tidied up, as it was the trays that had been left behind. So I'll be using the relative pronoun that. The relative clause is that had been left behind, and this can be squeezed into position after the noun they're clarifying, giving us the trays that had been left behind were tidied up by Ben. Notice how the main clause has been split in two. If we were asked to underline the main clause in this sentence, we'd need to underline these words here. Notice also how a pair of commas have been used to hold the embedded clause in place. So, embedded clauses are simply relative clauses that can be found within a main clause. They're always held in place with a pair of commas, and always come after the noun they're describing or clarifying.